it's something that it transcends generations, that this is something so, I mean, it's a tragedy. It is a tragedy, but it's something that's so uniquely Great Lakes and that history that every generation, it seems, gets that connection. I'm always surprised, even doing like a high school visit just to talk about weather, where it will come up. And it's, I mean, these kids are young, and why do you think that is, that this is something that really does go from just group to group to group, and it's, yeah, for lack of a better phrase, the legend lives on.
Well, exactly. And, really, Gordon Lightfoot can take a lot of that credit because, the song, the Grammy nominated song, Record of the Edmund Fitzgerald, is really the biggest thing that made the Edmund Fitzgerald the world's most famous shipwreck not named Titanic. I mean, that is a fact. There is more merchandise, videos, hits on to different website links than any other shipwreck other than the Titanic for the Edmund Fitzgerald. So a lot of that credit goes to Gordon Lightfoot, and then that song starts, like you said, transcending generations. But also, parents are keeping the story alive. High school or teachers in general are keeping the story alive. And the thing that we're going to really try to do in this film. Sure, the film is about the swimmers. You're going to be cheering for these swimmers to make it to Detroit, and you're going to see all the trials and tribulations. But obviously, the backstory is the tragedy of the Edmund Fitzgerald. But there's a backstory to that. Few people realize that there have been over 6,000 recorded shipwrecks on the Great Lakes, and more than 30,000 lives have been lost. More than 30,000 mariners have died on the Great Lakes since records have been kept. Few people realize that. And if you're not, especially if you're not from this part of the world, and they hear lakes, they don't realize these really are freshwater seas. They're larger than a lot of seas on this planet, but they're just not saltwater. And few realize the um, the perils that these mariners faced while they were building the economies of the United States and Canada. And this film is going to really help underscore that. And I think it started with the song, Gordon Lightfoot's song, that has come to represent the most modern of the big shipwrecks. But the story goes so much further back than that. So we remember the Fitzgerald, and if a person is so inclined to learn more, they realize that's really just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to maritime history in the Great Lakes. There had been quite a stretch there through the 50s, the 60s, and then, of course, the Edmund Fitzgerald in 1975. First the Carl Bradley was lost in Lake Michigan. And that was like, what, 1957, 1958? I want to say it was 58.
Yep.
And all hands died except for there were two survivors. And so there were 31 deaths and two survivors. And then I believe it was 1966, the Dennis Morrell was lost in Lake Huron, and that ship split in half, just like the Edmund Fitzgerald. There was one sole survivor, which is an amazing story. I got to meet that gentleman. He passed away in 2016. But so, in the late 50s, in the mid 60s, and then in the mid 70s, there were these three major shipwrecks.